Welcome to Taking Back Monday, where we transcend the ordinary to foster high-performance cultures that resonate with leadership vision and personal commitment. In this episode, we're honored to share the journey of Nick Klingensmith, whose life story is a masterclass in resilience, vision, and transformation. Nick's battle through the valleys of adversity and his ascent to the peaks of endurance racing is more than a narrative of personal triumph. It's a blueprint for what it means to take ownership, to align with a vision larger than oneself, and to drive towards success in a way that reshapes our understanding of potential and performance. Through his eyes, we see the essence of leadership, how to inspire by example, how to lead from the front in the darkest of times, and how to create a culture where every team member is not just contributing, but thriving and aligned with our shared vision. Nick's story is a beacon for leaders and individuals alike, illuminating the path to a work environment that's not only productive, but profoundly meaningful. As we unpack Nick's journey, let's draw parallels to our quest to redefine the workplace. Let's explore how his relentless pursuit of personal excellence can inspire us to foster environments where understanding the vision, taking ownership, and being driven by meaningful work are not just ideals, but the foundation of our everyday life. So buckle up for an open book conversation with Nick Klingensmith, and together, let's rediscover how to take back Monday, creating a culture of high performance that elevates everyone involved, one inspirational story at a time. Take us through your journey of your struggle from going from Las Vegas in the gutter to a 4-time cancer survivor and now an endurance athlete.
A pinnacle moment for me was in Friday afternoon in October of 2016 when my boss walks into my office and he says, "I want you to do a Spartan race with me." And I looked at him and I said, no. Like, are you kidding me? 8 to 10 mile trail run? This seems awful. I have no interest in being that uncomfortable. And I went home that night and I realized something. I'm a 4-time cancer survivor. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have 7 herniated discs from 2 different rollover car accidents, one of them a fatality. I've had meningitis. I have sleep apnea. I have nerve damage, attitude problems, just things that keep to mind. And it occurred to me that I already was that uncomfortable. I was at a position in my life where I was 2 years sober. I was dating a girl that's my now wife. I had just been promoted at work. I literally had everything going for me. And yet something was missing. And so I said yes to that race. And I thought it was going to be one race. In 9 weeks to train, the very first thing I did after signing up for the race was I set the alarm for 5 a.m. the next day. To me, that was the most uncomfortable thing I'd ever done in my life. And I mean that. I was the guy who woke up a minute and a half before I needed to be somewhere. And so that was unheard of. And yet, with that simple act of waking up to exercise, I woke up. I actually redefined everything that I believed about myself. And for every step along the way, it was like something else that I didn't think was going to be part of my life anymore. I lied to myself for years saying I couldn't run because of my knees, because of work, because of my sleep apnea, blah, blah, blah. And it just comes down to the fact that I was just fat, drunk, and lazy. And throughout that process, as all of a sudden I'm just stripping away all these self-doubts, I was different. And I began to let go of other resentments, and I began to let go of some of my armor and some of my edge. And I could see the way that people were responding to me in my life. And I had been sober for 2 years at this point, so I'd already seen a big change. But just in these couple of months, my attitude towards life and just this transformation that I was going through, I could see the reflection of others and I liked it. It was a power, it was making me feel better about myself. And when you do that, you want more of it, right? And spread the positivity. And then it hit me, literally hit me. The second car accident. I was sitting at a red light and a woman who, quite honestly, I don't know if she was actually alive when she hit me because she was going full speed, probably 50 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. And I'm sitting at a red light and she hit me. Her car went flipping over movie style. She survived that day, but she did pass away 12 days later. I got several more herniated discs from it. I got nerve damage from it. And when I went home that day after my Jeep was all racked up and then my cat of 12 years died, a couple days later, my dad gets arrested for something that I won't even go down that rabbit hole right now, but it was just all these overwhelming things of life were suddenly hitting me. And this new life that I thought I was fighting for was being taken away from me. And I wanted to punch back. I kept saying, I'm going to give up. I'm going to give up. But I don't know. What does that really mean? Right? Like you just stop going to work. You stop getting out of bed. I don't know. And so I signed up for another race, which was a couple months away. And even though I was injured, I mean, I had to learn how to do one arm push-ups just so I could stay active. And I used to live on Tampa Bay. So my house had a dock and it was right on the water. And it was like August or early September of 2017. And I, get up at crack of dawn to go train. And because it's Florida and everything's really flat and you can see for like thousands of miles, there was a storm coming in off the bay and I could see it. This scene was straight out of the movies. All right. Like I'm standing there, I'm having a conversation with myself. I'm carrying the weight of everything because something else had hit me that day that I had not yet overcome any of the stuff I had told you about. I hadn't overcome my adversity. I had only survived it. And I didn't want to be a victim anymore. I didn't want to be a survivor anymore. And this is going to translate to what we're talking about because I just didn't see the value in surviving, in thriving, in just existing. I just didn't see the value in it. And I said, you know what? Fuck it. Like, I'm going to go big. Let's go. Everything that is within me that says I can't do it is something that I need to do. If diabetics shouldn't do this, I'm going to do it. If I'm not going to let sleep apnea be an excuse to not live my life anymore. I'm not going to use cancer as a crutch to not be the person that I can be. Um, and I did. And I took back control of my life. And for the next several years, it really just started this transformation. But a key moment was when I published my book because writing it was one thing. The first version is the ego version, the movie version, the 125,000 word ego manifesto, the narcissist manifesto, the story you wanted people to see. But then I spent another year revising and revising and revising, and I cut out 30,000 words of all the bullshit. And all that was left was me naked. And I'm going through revising and revising, and I just start to see things in a different light. And I start to see the value of all the hell that I had been through. And I see the value of the transformation. And ultimately, all these lessons in both resilience and just a positive mindset started flooding in. And I knew that I had something to share to the world. And the thing that came right after that, though, was probably the most remarkable part of it, which is that people started reaching out to me and telling me their stories. And that's the part that I think helped me to connect. It gives me a power, it gives me a fuel. And it's also something that it's almost like an accountability partner in positivity because I don't care who it is. If somebody says they are positive 24/7 without effort, they are lying. So it's real easy to be
100%.
positive. People ask me how I'm always positive and motivated all the time. I'm like, I'm not. I'm almost never motivated. Never. And I'm positive because I try to be. But that's the story in a nutshell of what ultimately brings us here is now that I know I have this gift to give. And so my move is becoming a speaker and sharing that story in the hopes that it'll inspire others.
I think so many people look at transformative journeys as having to transform overnight. Like the first thing you mentioned is just setting an alarm for 5 a.m. I can't imagine that you became, a super endurance athlete overnight. Tell us a little bit more about like small, tiny steps you took to really transform who you were as a person.
So I'm going to actually go back a couple years before that too. I used to weigh 240 pounds, 237. I'm 5'10". I'm not big boned. I was fat and I was lazy and I hated it. I was a competitive beach volleyball player for a long time. My abs were my meal ticket. All right. And now I was like ashamed of myself. Right. But and I didn't think I could ever break it, like that's a lot of weight. And I wanted to lose like 40, 50 pounds. And that's how I looked at it for a long time. But I had gone to Vegas with a couple of buddies and we're at a pool party. And it's not the party that I noticed. It was when we got back and I saw a picture of me and my three friends, one of which is like the fittest dude on the planet. The other two are like 7 feet tall. So even if they were big, like they're in good shape, but they're normal people. And yet here was me with man boobs and a stomach that protruded like 15 feet in front of me. Cause that's how I get fat. I don't go this way. I go that way. And I was like, wow. And I even sent them that picture and I was like, what kind of friends are you? How did you not tell me this? So here's how I lost all the weight. Managing my macros in a fitness app. That's it. No diet. I didn't change almost anything in my life. All I did was use a calorie counter every day. And all of a sudden, it wasn't about losing 40 pounds. It wasn't even about losing 2 pounds a week. It was about hitting this calorie number every day. And I could get there however I needed to. So when I walk the dog, right, I'm burning those calories. Going to the gym, doing 10 minutes on the bike, just these little things began to make an incredible impact. And I mentioned this in my book. I even remember specifically texting my boss, a good friend of mine. He was one of the guys in Vegas. And I said, dude, I'm at 216 today. I never thought I would have saw a number like that. And it just kept
Right.
happening and happening. So those things happen by small, good decisions. And, people think they didn't lose weight. I don't go some big diet, right? They just think of the hell they have to go through. But I remember it was one Friday afternoon. I was walking with my ex-girlfriend and like, what do you want to eat tonight? I don't know. I'm lazy. I want to do this. I was like, you know what I want? I want a chicken parm sandwich. And she's like, yeah, me too. I looked down at my calorie app. I saw I had about 1,100 calories left for the day. And I got a sandwich. Goodness,
Yeah.
those small good decisions, they get easier to make and they open them up. And so I've learned that good habits are a gateway drug. Because by waking up early in the morning, all of a sudden I woke up. I had more time with my dog in the morning. I had more time to acclimate to the day, started exercising, blood's flowing, right? You're feeling good about yourself. I wanted to do more races after that first race. Well, turns out if you're going to train and race all the time, you need to learn how to recover. So I started learning how to
Mm.
do yoga and I needed to increase my mental toughness. So I started meditating and I learned about box breathing. I went to Cuba for a couple days. And I don't know if you've ever been, but all the good Cuban food is in Miami. They don't have
Mm.
Cuba, they don't have the spices down there. It's like if it wasn't growing up on the yard behind them, they don't have it. And so I come back after eating purely organic. It was good food. It was just very simple food, right? Eating
Yeah.
literally organic as could be food for several days. I come back and I was like, man, I'll get a greasy pizza. It made me sick.
I've heard that from people before that, like, when they go off processed food and they try to come back onto it, it just makes them feel terrible.
Awful. And so I'm not a nutrition expert, but every time I have the option of choosing organic or not, I choose organic. And again, it's like
Mhm.
little habits. These little habits just increase and they become a lifestyle. So it just starts with one.
I think one of the things that keeps people from becoming a high performing individual is the fear and rejection that they are worried about, you know? You have these aspirations. Did you have any fears about being rejected or failing when you were taking on these new habits?
As it turns out, and again, so like my story, right? My story isn't even stopped because of this continuous self-reflection and learning. I just learned a couple months ago, and by learned, I mean it really just kind of appeared to me that apparently I have been afraid of rejection my whole life. I was pretty much given up by my mom. She didn't have the capacity to love me. And my dad, well, though we have a great relationship now, it was not that then. And I just felt like a burden to him. And so for the longest time, I just put up these walls around me to protect myself from that. And for a while, that's good. I actually say that having a victim mindset can be used for your advantage. Like sometimes it's where gritty comes from, but you can't say it's me against the world unless you feel that you're victimized by the world. You against the world is
Mm.
still a victim mindset. And that's how I was for such a long time, not realizing that these walls that I constructed ultimately became a prison cell and I was just poisoning myself within it. So
Mhm.
as I realized my journey and struggle through all this, I don't know if I've been able to overcome fear of rejection, but I'm able to walk through fear. I'm going to give you a physical example. I'm really afraid of snakes, like really afraid. So on Saturday, I'm going to go do a Spartan race out in Jacksonville. It's going to be in swampland, middle of nowhere, anaconda, haven. I saw like a 6-foot gator last time. People said they saw water moccasins. I've seen snakes on many types of races, but here's the thing. I'm never going to handle a snake. Okay. So I'm not overcoming my fear. I am afraid of that snake, but I will not let that fear prevent me from doing the things that I want to do. And what that really comes down to is that my why has to be more powerful than my why not. What I'm doing it for has to be more powerful than the fears that are going to hold me back. And then whether that be a snake, starting a business, getting on a podcast, reaching out to people and just introducing yourself, knowing that rejection can happen. Also, I know this. I detach myself emotionally from the outcome. So, career salesperson, all right? Like 20 years ago, if you told me you're going to be a process driven person, I felt like you're fucking wrong. Like, no way. That's why they burn out. That's why they burn out. That's why at 55, they've had 27 jobs, and they're still doing the same thing. There's some career salespeople who that's what they want to do. There's nothing wrong with not wanting to move up the ladder, right? But there's so many
Right.
that are just sort of, and I was too, and I get it because they hire you for that. They want those 22-year-old, you know, too dumb to make different decisions, high energy, let's follow this and blah, blah, blah type thing. And I think that was great for a while. But at the same time, the company that I first worked for was also very process driven. And they did bring in some coaches and speakers from time to time. So I had some strong influences and I learned about like metrics and ratios back then. And I've studied that for the last 22 years. And so
Yeah.
even now, you can. So I don't have a CRM yet, but I track everything that I do because I want to know I want to know how to succeed. And so right now, because I'm new in what I'm doing, I'm figuring out how to succeed. But pretty soon I'm going to have a system that works and I can pull the levers and tweak that system as I go, but I no longer have to worry about emotions and because fear is an emotion. It's not logical.
I came across a quote yesterday, actually, putting together a presentation for a client, and it struck me because I am also very data centric. Like, I'm going to collect all of the things to try to figure out what the best way to do this is. And it said collecting metrics is like cashing checks. And I was like,
Yeah.
yes, it is. Because I'm going to collect those metrics. I'm going to understand, what it takes to be successful and what that looks like.
Now,
So, pivoting to how you can help other leaders who want to create and have an impact on the team around them. What do you think are the key elements in building a high performing team that's ready to not only overcome, but embrace challenge?
these are going to be some very uncomfortable responses here because I want to give you some examples. I've talked to 22 managers or directors, most of which in the logistics space this month. Out of those 22, 21 of them, no, I'm sorry, 20 of them received no training at all. Two of them were given a half hour like video to watch for HR training. Not one of them was trained how to be a leader. Four of them were account managers. Two of them were promoted. Two of them were hired on as managers. One of them was a director because they had people on their team of account management. Leadership skills, there are people who are born leaders. There are certain qualities, right? But those born leader qualities are really just about the way that they communicate with other people, how they pursue their goals. They're leading by example. And I'm going to call myself out because for a long time, I was more of I'm going to overpower you. I have the answer and I'm going to overpower you, which the people who were with you, but everybody else that probably didn't think I was a good leader. And they were probably right about it. So what's happening right now is that managers are sales leaders, and I mean the executives, are abdicating their responsibility for developing their sales leaders. They're washing their hands of the sales process. They're not, they don't even hold the managers truly accountable to tasks. So what we're missing right now, number one, is expectations. Managers don't
Right.
know what's expected of them. So what they do is they gravitate towards what they're familiar with, which for me back in the day was, overpowering them. Like, I have a system, I know it works, you're gonna do it my way. I'm gonna explain it once and get mad the rest of the time if you don't follow it, which obviously has a shelf life, right? Another time,
Right.
the account managers, they just go back into being account managers. They don't know how to manage people. They don't know how to help and mentor because mentorship is not accountability. Communication is not accountability. And the other issue that we're having right now is
Yeah, 100%.
micromanagement is not accountability.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that leaders will default to micromanagement when they don't know what else to do. But a lot of times they're just disappearing. Salespeople in particular are on an island because the people are not equipped to actually work with their people. They don't know how else to do besides manage the metrics. By the way, every single one of those 22 people who said that they had not, had not hit their numbers, a couple of them fibbed a little at first and then later in the conversation broke down and be like, yeah, no, we're shy, shy of the numbers, whatever. Every single one of them pointed to someone else as to why.
Yeah.
It's
No personal
not
accountability.
one,
It's
not
him.
one did they say, you know what, like I could have done this more. I could have helped my team more. It was, no, I have a couple guys who aren't holding up their end or, this person's doing this and this person's doing that. If it's, are you empowered to fire that person? No. And what are you doing here? You're a traffic cop. That's it. Like, and that's, by the way, not for nothing. I'm not blaming the manager because that's a terrible position to be in. It's holding managers accountable to results without empowering them to achieve those results is micromanagement of the
Yeah.
worst kind.
One of the things that you said is the idea of, well, I'm your boss, so therefore you're going to do it. No asks, no questions, right? I think it's important for leaders to also set context because
Yes.
you might have been a great seller. Now you're in this position. Yes, you want it done a certain way. Why do you want it done that way? Explain to your team. Maybe that will help them understand why you're asking them to do it this way. They don't have all the context and background that you do. But I think to your point, leadership, you said the word skill. multiple times. That is a skill that needs to be honed and refined, and you can't just be a great seller and therefore a great manager. It's just not the same skill set.
Exactly. And I actually, in my new book I'm writing, I talk about how the cliche is that your best salespeople make the worst managers, but that's not true. Just because you're a good salesperson doesn't make them a good manager, but all your managers were your best salespeople. And they know how to do the
Right.
job. They've proven the system. They know how to get resources. They know how to get things done. They know the work ethic. And of course, therefore, they have something that they should be able to help, transfer to other people. It's a problem when you just say, hey, you're number one, you're the manager now, like in those account managers. Hey, you manage
Right.
$450,000 book of business for this and blah, blah, blah. Clearly, you know how to run a team of 10.
Right. No, they're completely different completely different skill sets, not even in the same
Yeah,
realm.
exactly.
You know, you mentioned that you're writing a new book. That's very exciting.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Um, as you're known for being a passionate, raw storyteller. So, how do you use story to motivate those around you?
It's funny. I only use story now. I was thinking of that when you're talking about how leaders need to explain things. So back in the day, I would get on the whiteboard and because I would try to break down, I had no problem with somebody wanting to understand what I was telling them to do. I welcomed an opposing view while we were considering what to do. But once the edict was out, go do your fucking job. I don't have time for this. I like to take stories of anything that I find relatable. And sometimes, because I tell stories within stories within stories, I might be talking about doing an obstacle course race. Suddenly, I'm going to tell you something about when I was 11 years old, relate it back to when I was working in telecom, and somehow circle back to here's why we have to do the thing that we have to do. I was in logistics for a long time, and there was one thing that really drove people nuts in logistics. I wouldn't let them pass blame for anything. I said, and I mean anything. I said, it may not be our fault, but it is our responsibility. They are paying us for
Mm,
two things only: communication and information. That's our responsibility. We don't drive trucks. We don't manufacture. We don't load the truck. So if I'm not doing any parts of those, we have to be willing to we can't solve problems that we don't own. And so it would
right.
actually it was tough for them at first, and to take away that safety net from people where you can't simply blame or, you know, uh, find fault and really sit around and be like, well, this happened and this happened. I'm like, listen, we are going to debrief because we want to know what happened so we can prevent it from happening again. But right now, it doesn't matter. We have a job to do. We have a play to execute, and it does not matter how we
Mm,
arrived here. So there's a story. But in those stories, I talk about those things where, for someone to hire someone in logistics and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, hey, Nick, truck's not showing up, tough shit. The driver sucks. I'm like, well, I hired you. What value are you
right.
creating for me? Like, we give away our power when we blame other people and things.
I think that's very powerful. And I'm going to reiterate, we give away our power when we blame other people and other things. I think that's a point that people really need to understand. It's not about washing your hands of it and saying, not my circus, not my monkeys. It's saying, I have no power in this situation, therefore I'm just going to walk away. And that's not what anybody wants. We all want to feel like we have control over our own lives and our own destinies.
Jocko always talks about discipline is freedom, but I go back a step and I say personal responsibility is freedom.
Mm,
Because yes, discipline is how you maintain your freedom. But if you want to be free in the first place, you have to say, I am responsible. I am not a victim
yeah.
to diabetes. I am responsible for my diabetes. That's the situation and the circumstances that I have today. I don't blame my mom. I don't blame my dad for why I was so untrusting and afraid all this time, because once I realized it, I am responsible. Everything that happened to you before this moment happened. But everything that happens from this moment right forth is a choice. Whether you want to abdicate that choice or not, you can choose to be a victim and just let things happen to you, or you can try to make sense of it.
If you're talking to a leader, they have a team of sellers or customer facing, employees, and their goal is to really create that resilient, high performing culture. What is the first tiny step you would have that leader take?
Meetings, meetings, and meetings. And I know that everyone's going to cringe when I say that,
I was like, oh
but
no.
but
Yeah.
not bullshit waste of time meetings. And I'm going to give you an example. This place I was working at not too long ago, and I wouldn't actually, I don't really care. We would have these all hands meetings once a week. Okay. They got canceled or moved 75% of the time. We're talking like 30 or so people on these calls. Okay. And the leaders they always started the call by saying, well, I don't really have a lot prepared today. And they would do this like this just round robin circle nonsense of, hey, does anybody else have anything else? Like a 4-minute call. We're on there for 30 minutes. And what they don't realize, okay, is we're sitting here like, you're supposed to tell us how to succeed. You couldn't prepare for this meeting. What does that say about your view of your relationship with us? My leader had a one-on-one with me every week that she canceled 4 out of 5 times. Every time. And any other time that she showed up, she wasn't prepared for the meeting. And I'm like, I'm prepared. Why am I not getting a degree of mutual respect here? And I think the only times, when I talk to sales reps, by the way, which I've talked to like 100 of them now, having these same conversations, those 22 leaders that I talked to you, they all said, my people don't want to be don't need to hear from me. They don't want to be micromanaged. All their reps said, I only hear from my boss when I'm in trouble. 10 years ago, you hired the kid out of school because they were the happy-go-lucky, high energy, people buy from people, bigger than life, bar stool salespeople. And now we shoved them in a closet with a laptop and we don't talk to them anymore. We wonder why their numbers suck. You've taken away the
Right.
thing you hired them for. So how else do we do that, right? Yeah, a structured meeting. Feed them information. Give them information. Let them be part of it. Let them know what's going on with the company. Who cares if they take that information? Like, you're not telling them proprietary stuff, right? But like, tell them what's going on. Let them feel part of something. In the absence of information, people come to their own conclusions and they're never good ones. Other meetings that I think are totally ignored right now is the impromptu one-on-one. And what I mean by that is I would actually hit my team up on Microsoft Teams. Like I might dial one person, I might dial 2 or 3. It's not to check on them. It's to check
Right.
in with them. I would just bullshit. Like, hey, Liz, how's it going today? Cool. And they'd start telling me about work. I'm like, yeah, what are you up to this weekend? Like, just imagine if you were in an office and you go stop by their desk and sit on their desk for a minute. That's it. Just open communication. So not like terrible meetings where everybody's cringing to be from. Some of those meetings probably have to be there, but get the team together. Also encourage the team to communicate together. We
Mm.
actually like did that in my last job. Me and a couple other reps would meet like bi-weekly, and it just helped to know that we weren't alone, because when I am a part of something bigger than myself, you get all of me. And I mean all of me, the parts that I didn't know I had, because I'm doing it for a
Same.
bigger reason, for a bigger cause. Nobody does this
Yeah.
shit alone. We all need to be part of something.
There's so much in there that you said that I like am processing. Before COVID, I worked in an office,
Yep.
right? And I had this conversation with my coworker. We're all remote still. Because it just financially doesn't make sense for us to go back to an office. We're all spread across the country. We're all from home. And I said, one thing I really miss is like that water cooler time. Like I felt like I really got to know my coworkers. I knew, their kids' names and their dogs' names and the fact that they were going to the lake this weekend and what their plans were. And now all of my meetings are so tactical. We're there to do something very specific and there's no like bullshitting time, which I think is really important for developing relationships with your coworkers. Like, yes, it's your job, but they can also be people that you get to know. Some of my best friends are people that I worked in an office with because I got to know them,
Exactly.
and not because, and it in an office, it doesn't have to be so intentional. When you're remote, you have to intentionally go after that. Just like you said, I have to make the choice to build that relationship in a way that's authentic.
Exactly. I used to call them in an office, and I was kind of a hard ass about working. But I also encouraged what I called the 3 to 5 minute commercial, commercial
Mm,
break. Like, number one, if you're in a role where you're just grinding all day, if you're in if you have a leader who doesn't want you to take a break a few minutes, you have a bad leader. Like, you need to replenish the stores.
100%.
I look at myself and I'm like, I'm in LinkedIn a lot of my day, and the inbox is not conducive to productivity. And I get burnt out on it real fast. So I'm like, okay, 5 messages, go do something else. Like, it's how I stay focused and task orientated, when, it's how you stay resilient, is just these little tricks and things to kind of keep you focused throughout the day. But it was, and you need those 3 to 5 minute commercials. Just also, again, like, we need human connection. People say that we don't. For the longest time in my life, I protected myself from other people, but
Mm.
nobody does this alone.
So the last question I ask everybody, first of all, actually two last questions. First of all, if someone wants to connect with you, where should they go? Where should they look
I
for
am
you?
everywhere on social media at Stride Motivation. My website is stridemotivation.com, and I can also be reached directly at booking@stridemotivation.com.
And then the last question, we always want to know, in your opinion, who is, one of your peers, one of your thought leaders? Who else should we be talking to on Taking Back
Oh, why
Monday?
did I not think of this one?
First person that comes to mind.
Yeah, actually, a guy I know named Robert Foster. I'll connect you guys
Okay.
with him. He actually has a podcast of his own too, but he's a trainer and a speaker and puts all these worlds together, and he's dealing with other professionals as well. So I think he'd have some awesome insight.
Awesome, Nick. Anything else you'd like to leave us with?
Just a reiteration of one thing. The value I've learned throughout everything is this: aligning your purpose is a more powerful weapon than you could ever understand. The idea of the Taking Back Monday, how do you get rid of the Sunday scaries? You don't focus on the shit you don't want to do. You focus on why are you doing it? And that transcends paycheck, 401k, blah, blah. Like, why are you doing it? I didn't like my job the last 2 years in logistics, yet I grinded away because I knew I wanted to do this. I had a message to help people, and that was
Mm.
going to be a vehicle to help me get there. Align what you're doing with why you're doing it, and you will never run out of steam.
As we wrap up this powerful episode with Nick Klingensmith, we're left with invaluable lessons that resonate with anyone looking to elevate their life and leadership. The power of starting small. Nick's journey reminds us that monumental change begins with simple, consistent actions. Whether it's setting an alarm for 5 a.m., managing those macros, or working with your coworkers, it's the small steps that pave the way for transformation. Facing fear head on. Nick's story is a testament to facing and walking through fear, not letting it dictate our paths. His courage to confront challenges, from overcoming cancer to braving Spartan races, illustrates the strength we all possess to push beyond our limits. Embracing personal responsibility. The essence of taking back control lies in owning our actions and decisions. Nick's shift from victimhood to empowerment showcases the profound impact of personal accountability on our lives and work. As we take these lessons to heart, let's help spread this message of resilience, determination, and transformation. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear Nick's story, and together, let's grow this community of changemakers. Thank you for joining us on Taking Back Monday. Let's make every day count.